The state of the food supply chain is the topic of my conversation today with Keith Daniels. He is partner with Karl Marx Advisors. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So we are, in fact, going to be talking about the food supply chain today. Now, as we see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel and the possible alleviation of the pandemic, what is the current state of food producers, sellers, and their supply chains right now? How are they getting by? How are they meeting supply with demand and getting product to market?
Well, you'd think that, as we've come through the pandemic, obviously there was a lot of disruption early on for everyone, but there's still a lot of challenges out there, quite frankly. As the economy is starting to, liven up here a little bit, and exports from China are highly in demand, there's a lot of challenges, both from suppliers, United States suppliers exporting product, as well as importing goods, and it's affecting refrigerator containers and food containers from around the world, affecting everything from pulp to fruits and vegetables, seafood from New Zealand, for example. So there's still a lot of challenges out there.
Are they having the same equipment availability problems as other aspects of the supply chain? I know it's a highly specialized business where you do need the refrigerated capability, but are they having trouble getting trailers and containers and stuff to move stuff to market?
They are, and frankly, it's both refrigerated and regular containers. So regular container shipping from South America, selling in coffee or pulp to make tissue paper, right? These staples that would be on the grocery shelf, obviously are challenged, but the refrigerated containers are as well. I mean, there's just so much demand out there for containers and trying to keep products moving that, and quite frankly, part of the problem is containers in the wrong places right now, as different countries and their ports have opened and closed at different times. There is that shortage for sure.
I guess we should specify when we talk about the food supply chain, that's an awfully general term. There's the grocery supply chain, the retail, there's institutional, there's restaurant and the like. But I'm wondering how each of these sections or sectors fared during the pandemic itself. There's obviously a lot of disruption. Can you speak to just what they went through in 2020 and how it was different from what they were used to in the way of doing business?
Sure. Well, we all know, as we were shopping back in March, April of last year in preparation when this all first hit, there were a lot of stockouts on the grocery shelf, right? And, but there was an imbalance because you had suppliers that were supplying into the restaurant vertical, as you mentioned, and suppliers into grocery. And they were very distinct in most cases. And so there was product that was getting, frankly, there was a lot of spoilage and a lot of product that was being unsold within that restaurant supply chain. But on the grocery side, they're having a difficult time keeping things in stock and on shelf. So you saw a lot of creativity with these distributors working together and showing flexibility in converting product to things that would be more sellable on the grocery shelf, and keeping the supply moving. That helped them get through that. Now, you never know. I mean, so the grocery has bounced back in a large case, mostly at the expense of restaurants. And a lot of them experienced double-digit growth by the end of last year compared to the prior year, which in grocery is really unheard of. I mean, it typically is a very low growth industry. So, I think as we move forward, you'll see a lot of that shifting back to the grocery because there's a lot of pent-up demand to go out to eat. Right now, people are getting vaccinated. They want to get out and get back to normal as much as possible. So grocery stores are bracing for that change.
But the landscape will not look exactly like it did before the pandemic, will it? Because a number of people who might never have considered ordering groceries online discovered that it was a pretty convenient thing to do. And I'm wondering, to what degree will they go back to the stores when they open, or as they are now opening? Well, they've been open all this time, really, in a large extent. But as they're open freely, how many people who got used to online purchases do you think will stick to that, or how many will just go back into a physical store?
I think it's all yet to be seen. But one of the things this grocery has been able to do is make a lot of investment in technology to support the online ordering. And you see it, in the stores when you go in, that they have special sections set up now to store the goods for pickup or delivery. They've been investing in the technology behind and the platforms, and the revenues that they've been able to generate here this last year has really enabled them to make those investments. Some of the larger chains, for example, anticipate that e-commerce will become 20% of their total revenues going forward. So they do anticipate a shift.
Hmm.
This e-commerce has always been a part of the grocery story, kind of leading up to the pandemic, but adoption had been low, as you referenced. But those older generations, it was adopted, very well by the younger generations, right? With, they use their cell phones for everything, but older generations were a little more reluctant. Um, but the safety and security issues around the COVID pandemic, encouraged them to take advantage of it, and they've become more trusting of the process and feel good about what they're getting as far as the groceries. There's always concern about, produce, or am I getting, good product that I want? So, I do think it's here to stay, but there's going to be a balance. There will still be brick and mortar stores, but they're converting some of their stores to what they call dark stores to help
Right.
service this higher demand.
Yeah. And also part of their store is converting to fulfillment centers or micro fulfillment centers to
Exactly.
simultaneously bring in customers and also fill online orders. But I'm wondering too whether we're going to see any permanent changes in sourcing strategies by the retailers. Will they get more local in their sourcing so as to mitigate the risk of long supply lines? Will they go to different suppliers on a permanent basis? Do you see any big changes like that coming?
I do. Um, Grocery has been an industry that's been kind of changing over time, and there's been a lot of consolidation. The bigger players have had continue to strengthen. I think we'll see that a bit through COVID as well. So they're going to continue to strengthen their supply chains, but diversification is going to be important. I think that's one of the lessons learned through this. You can't rely solely on export items. You have to have more local to spread that risk. And so you're going to see some more domestic production, I believe, out of this, just if
Mhm.
for no other reason to mitigate any future supply chain disruptions.
There's a lot of talk these days about the need for better tracking and tracing of the provenance of food as it travels from the supply chains, so-called from farm to fork. What challenge do you think the industry faces now? How good a job do you think it's doing in this tracking and tracing across the supply chain? What more needs to be done? And is there hope that they could be improving that capability going forward?
I think there's certainly opportunity going forward. Technologies such as AI, artificial intelligence, and enabling them to help track that product. Also doing forecasting and better scenario analyses, and get at that better understanding is those are all things that the industry is looking into, and I think we'll see more of going forward.
Hmm.
Other technologies such as robotics, I think will be leveraged more, so there's less reliance on labor, so to avoid those disruptions as well. But
Yeah.
the tracking is certainly, I think there's been a lot of progress made there, but there's still yet more to be done.
A lot of people talking up blockchain as a solution in that regard. Do you see that as
Yes.
being a big deal?
I certainly see that as an opportunity for this. I mean, I think as other industries adopt it and becomes more accepted widely, I think we certainly will see that. I think it's still being figured out in some respects, but things like blockchain and the cloud are all enablers in helping them you do that
Hmm.
tracking.
Highly regulated industry for obvious reasons, and the industry has had to deal with the passage of the Food Safety Modernization Act in recent years. Do you think any more new regulations coming down the pike? Anything that the industry needs to be concerned about on the regulatory side?
I think safety is certainly critical within this industry, and we're seeing more of that. Right now at ports, for example, making sure that the employees are being tested, the products being handled safely on both ends. So I think just going forward, the customers are going to request that and require it. If they want to know their food product is safe and secure.
Hmm.
So I think we'll see more regulations from a safety standpoint, just making sure that um, we can avoid any sort of pollutants within the food.
Do you have any confidence that this particular industry is going to be any better at handling the next disruption, or is it just that they have to get it through it every time because it differs? The type of disruption that happens is always a little bit different. Do you think the industry is better prepared now because of the pandemic?
I do believe that this was certainly a wake up call for not just grocery but all industries, and how to deal with these things going forward. So there's going to be, I was just mentioning around the regulatory piece, but there's going to be a lot more focus on safety to sort of prevent the next if it's another health related disruption.
Hmm.
And this has forced them to be much more creative and find business partners going, as I talked about the restaurant and the grocery suppliers and distributors and how they've had to work together. So I think they need to find more sort of omni-channel opportunities, find business partners that can help them through this disruption, and really think outside of this very vertical sort of grocery food supply network, and how to best manage this going forward.
Think outside, you mean maybe draw on lessons from other types of supply chains and sectors, or how do you mean?
Well, I think as you brought up earlier, I think looking more local, for example,
Yeah.
and also having a partner. I think we may see more food distributors not just be so grocery centric, but also have the restaurant side and other institutional type supply chains. So they partner with those folks to have a broader customer base so they can adapt and flex as necessary.
Right. Well, Keith Daniels of Karl Marx Advisors, thanks for your insights on the state of the food supply chain right now and where it might be going as it gets ready for the next big disaster. But anyway, I really appreciate you being with me today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.